Hey, everybody. How we doing? Can you hear us okay? All right. Yes,
Test.
yes,
Yep.
there we go. Hello.
Mhm.
I'm Hannah Oliver Depp. I'm the co-owner, along with Christine Ballo, who is out there, of Loyalty Bookstores. We are Black, queer, Asian, and disabled owned, and we are so proud to be here in DC. Our main location is in Petworth, and we are so proud to partner with the library on so many beautiful events all throughout the city. But this jewel in our library branches, the MLK branch here, I just encourage you, if you've never been here before, check it out. There's so many incredible resources, incredible librarians just wanting to help you find the perfect book or help you find a community resource that you need, especially right now as we are facing awful pressure from the federal government trying to cut into our taxpayer dollars here in DC, take advantage of these resources and show them how much they are needed. And I just want to take a second to thank our DC librarians for being such incredible partners. Woo! We thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. They hold the line for real in the city also. We thank you. All right, sorry, I love them. I can't help it. I'm gonna get all emotional. So I am so excited to be in convo with you today. I was reading this book, which is such a switch up from your first book, which we'll talk about a little bit. As a Black bookseller, someone from this part of not just the country, but the DMV specifically, there's so much in this book that I related to. We have a homecoming here, y'all. This is a Maryland brother. And, but I think in particular, I remember getting this is something called an advanced reader copy, an ARC. And I got this and I was like, ooh, that's got me in my gut, because there is such a tension in between representing your people, being there for your people, holding space, and also the capitalism part of it, where there is a feeling of trading on Black pain, trading on an idea of the white gaze on the Black experience and what it's expected. And so when you are selling Black books and you're here to celebrate Black books, there's also sometimes a sense of like, well, wait a minute. Am I actually sharing the full story? Am I actually getting things out? And fighting in that tension, in that space constantly, especially in the publishing industry, which is so dominated by the white gaze. I was like a little scared to open your book. I was a little frightened. And I immediately was welcomed in because you are so brutally honest in this book.
Oh, thank you.
It's you just like, you rip that Band-Aid off immediately and you go for it. And I just really wanted to thank you for that, because that cannot have been easy. And we'll talk about whether or not you were supported in that effort. But I appreciated it because...
Now I'm scared.
I know, right? This is being recorded. Simon & Schuster is watching. No, I'm just kidding. Because it's not easy to talk about chasing safety through dollars, chasing safety through proximity to whiteness, chasing safety through proximity to Blackness, chasing safety. And the whole point is, you are asking, why are we chasing safety to begin with? So I wanted to talk a little bit about immediately the title, literally, How to Sell Out, the hidden cost of being a Black writer, and about what made you move from Black magic, which is talking about overcoming trauma and using trauma to be successful in America, to selling out as a Black writer.
Well, first of all, thanks everybody for being here. This is obviously my home base, and this is the most nervous that I have been for any of these, and probably the most nervous of anything that I do ever is to speak into a microphone in front of people who have known me since I was born, because I guess the tension, as you put it, is that somebody who has known you your whole life, like my parents, my sister, my god brother over here, I got people here from college, my aunties are all here, like all these people might see you speaking honestly and think either you are a fraud now or you were being a fraud then. because these two things don't match.
We
and that-
contain multitudes.
yeah, that's right. That's the nervousness. But to speak to the book, first of all, I'm glad that you felt a danger when you saw the book. The subtitle, when I made the cover of this book, I wanted it to look like a poisonous creature, like a poisonous frog or snake or something, because I wanted someone who opened this book to come in knowing that what they were going to find was something with a point on the end, something that like, I didn't want to catch people by surprise. I wanted them to know what they were walking into. Mm-hmm. You ask about the transition from Black Magic to this book. I'm going to keep talking about my family because they're here. I have a distinct memory of when I was a kid and my mom would come, we would say our prayers at night, and sometimes I would ask her, I would always ask my mom very difficult questions to answer as a kid. And one of those questions was, okay, well, what's outside of the world? Space. What's outside of space? A galaxy. What's outside of a galaxy? And I would just keep asking because I was looking to know what's outside of the whole thing. And when I think about Black Magic, that is a book about how to climb the ladder that is in front of us. And this book is meant to not even answer, but to ask the question, what's outside the ladder? How did the ladder even get there? Am I allowed to live outside of that particular chase or climb of status and hierarchy and capitalism and race? And, is there anything else out there for me but this? Because if this is what I have to do to climb the ladder, if these are the stories I have to tell, and they cause me this much, I'll just in this one, I'll just say they cause me this much stress sometimes. Then, do I really have a future in this? Because can I sustain? And do I want to end up like I have some mentors and heroes who I think have found a way to do this job and have fun and enjoy their lives. And I see others that I've gotten to know who it has destroyed. And I don't want to go for that. I don't want that life. Yeah. So that's what this book is.
It's really interesting you talk about you wanted the cover to be a warning or like an exotic snake or something. Because you talk in the book about the slow swallowing of poison that is climbing that ladder. And so, this is the hometown, so I assume everyone's got the bio memorized. But you were at Google, right? And that's the job, right? Yeah. Especially in the mid-2000s, like that was the job.
Absolutely.
And that's also thing for the hometown. Like, I had before I opened Loyalty, I had a job that my parents were like, this is their job, right? And it's a lot scarier for your kid to be like, I'm going to open an independent bookstore, no doubt. Right? Like, yes. That, like, there's pride there, but there's also, like, that was not the assignment. Like, that is not why you went to college, right? No. You were supposed to get an IRA. Like, so you're on the path, you've got it, and you're just the tenseness, the constant tenseness. And so you pivot to the life of an artist, but you still have that drive for safety. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I want to be precise to it. There is a drive for safety. I feel it's a weird contrast to the state of this country because at the moment I feel safer than I have maybe ever as an adult within my own little cone.
Right. Within your own universe.
Yeah, and like I'm. If I may, I think why my writing resonates with some people is because I'm normal. I'm afflicted. Like, I do want to be rich. I do want, I have those impulses to be a capitalist. Right. I did start my career at Google. I do think about how do these book sales scale up. And now my mission is like, how do I get, with all due respect, how do I get a bigger share of them than the share I get when I do a deal with Simon & Schuster? How do I get a bigger share of my podcast downloads than I do when I do a split with Spotify? So I'm not outside of it. I'm not, but the ambition for safety that I had confused was the idea that like being rich and successful would make me less. It would offer me a less perilous life than a normal black life. That's because that's what's sold. I mean, the idea that your degree, your nice job, your gated community, all these things that we have watched yet still crumble and destroy our own people. We are still sold the idea that there's safety in that, and then we take out mounds and mounds of loans and debt to try to get to those places, and then you get there and it's still not there. So
you get there and it's still not there, and then you might get there and it's there, but there's still the constant interruption and there's still the anxiety. So there are so many descriptions, like they just kept underlining them and finding them, of moments where you talk about, and I was like, I'm having a tummy moment. Is what I call it, when like both there's a warning tingle that goes off, right? Which as a black person, you know, as a female presenting person, you know, anyone who's in any situation where they might be vulnerable, you learn these skills of self-defense and warning, and you learn how to listen right to that. And then you put yourself in proximity to upper class whiteness, and a space that you say, this is a space that's resource rich. We know they funded these schools. We know that this neighborhood has better safety stats, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet you know that you were not in particular safe there.
yeah. I mean, in many cases, I'm looked at as an intrusion to those spaces by way of being there. I live in a place right now where we were just laughing about our dogs getting us into trouble where we live. Like,
Yep.
I live somewhere right now where I pay the highest rent of anybody in my building, and I am the most scrutinized as a neighbor. You know, every time there's noise after a certain time, every time somebody sees me doing a fire pit in my backyard, because I'm the only one with a backyard. Like,
You're like, this is my backyard.
that's what I thought, but it's not.
It's not.
It's like, it's not, because I live in Glendale, Queens, and I rent, and it's not mine. So I am reminded of that constantly.
Yeah.
Even though I moved there, to your point, to get a little bit out of the fray of Crown Heights and to get a little bit away from yellow tape every now and then on the weekends, and like it's the constant frenetic, like trying to find that one little safe lily pad to live on that I think takes so much away from free thought, hanging out with your friends, hanging out with loved ones, kicking it with your nephews, like
Price
all
of the
the
ticket.
normal stuff you're supposed to enjoy.
Yes. And
Yeah, I'm yelling. God.
I know, because
Sorry.
I got worked up reading this, so I guess we're in the same page.
That's how I feel.
Like-
And not to jump ahead, because I imagine this is, you know what, I won't even do it.
Yes,
And you're
do.
well,
No, listen, we're having a free-flowing conversation. That's the whole point of reading the book, so we can just talk about it.
the book starts with a declaration that may or may not be true, but it is me saying this will be my last time writing about race, because I want to get this out. I don't want to make the same album over and over again. Like, I have said it. It's here. This is how I feel. Maybe 10 years from now, I want to maybe we'll live in another world, and I want to come back to it. But I have so much more fun and so many more interesting things to say in other spaces of thought. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's, you say a couple times, you're like, someone else has talked more extensively. Like, I have said publicly, this is my stance on reparations. Here we go. I've
Yes.
said it. Moving on. And there's a lot of people whose full careers are researching and expressing this. I shouldn't have to give it to you every time we have a conversation,
And
right?
they're much more researched. They're more eloquent about it because they live in it more. They think about it more. Mark Lamont Hill, Ta-Nehisi Coates can
Right.
do this better than I can, you know. But I think this is the thing with Hollywood is
Ooh.
once somebody finds that you can do it just good enough for them to sell something around it, now you are the expert to call on, even if you are far from an expert.
Yes. If you are far from an expert, I mean, when I first started, I was an academic before this, and I studied the other and medieval literature and interwar trauma. Listen, you want to talk to me about dragons? I got you. You want to talk to me about panic when Europe discovered the other half of the world existed? Sure. But mostly, I know a lot about dead white people literature. And let me tell you what, when I first started book selling, everybody was like, so I hear you have your degree in James Baldwin. I was like, I do not. Unfortunately, it's Le Morte d'Arthur. Like, it is not, right? But the presumption of expertise of blackness was put upon me, and then I became it because I was like, well, they're going to keep asking me these questions till I do it. And honestly, I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for that world that opened up to me. But I didn't get to choose it, right? It was chosen for me. And you talk a lot about the presumption of blackness put upon you, both to be an expert on all of these things because you are a public figure. And you're like, granted, I'm standing on the stage, right? So y'all are going to ask me the questions. You put yourself on the stage, they're going to ask you the questions. However, you talk about even growing up, the tensions between what kind of black person you're supposed to be, the idea that to be black inherently means trauma, inherently means poverty, inherently means this, and
The
that
false idea,
the
yeah.
false idea,
Yeah.
completely false. But then also that within the black community, if you're in the middle class house, that you have crossed over the line into whiteness too.
Yeah, I think something that's in this book and that is recently just on my mind as I think a part of what I explore when I'm writing is these different games, these like some are infinite and some are finite games that we're trying to beat and that we didn't choose. And one of them is the status game, which is exhausting and infinite. And you know, I've had 7 different conversations this week about who's black in what way, who uses the N-word when and how, is a person of African descent as black, or I'm sorry, is a person who is an African immigrant as black as a person who is a
Descendant of slaves
of
in America.
slavery or the intercontinental, yeah, and it's like, furthermore, in the middle class culture, we spend so much time slicing up who is the closest to being privileged and who can appear palatable the best.
Yes.
And it just, besides the fact that it's exhausting and it hurts, it also just, it's not interesting enough.
It's really not.
It's just not enough. Like, that's not enough for a life.
It's not enough for a life, and it's not the conversation that you, to your point, you want to be having, you want to be writing, you want to be exploring. And instead of creating and instead of communing and instead of taking time, I do want to talk about this beautiful image you have of someone who had bought his way to freedom and got to sit under a tree.
Yeah.
But instead of getting to enjoy sitting under that tree as a free man, finally, he's thinking about how do I earn more money to free more of my family, right?
Yeah, his name's Lunsford Lane.
Yes.
As a freed slave or enslaved person or however you want to put it that went on the road doing freedom talks basically and used the money that he was earning from those talks that he was having with abolitionists to try and go back and one by one buy his family's freedom, which I think for the black person born within the last 100 years is very relatable.
Yes.
It's like go as far as you can and come back and try to get everybody else to where you got to.
Yes.
And that and
That cycle is continuing. Always.
it's constantly continuing and the it seems sometimes that the worst thing you can do as a black person is go backwards. And that story about that freed slave, it resonated so much with me because he was going to talk to white people about freeing slaves so he could make money to go free slaves.
Some slaves.
Yeah.
Yes, some enslaved folks. And I think that is the thing too. It's like that is how we have been educated to be safe in the spaces that are not for us, right? Because none of this was designed for us. And therefore, we are supposed to sell a version of blackness that is inspirational or palatable, but also tragic enough that people get to feel superior. And it's all of that complicated math we are doing constantly in our heads. It's that gif of the person doing the complicated math, just like looking into the distance, right? That's happening. That is an equation that we all learn to do from childhood on. And you're doing it everywhere, all the time, in every community, and you're never allowed to rest. And then you talk really beautifully about the moments playing ball with your friends, actually getting to write for a little while. These moments where you're like, I can count all of them because they are so rare that I am truly at rest.
Yeah, I mean, who in this room especially can't relate to that feeling? The feeling that you are, and it's not all just race related. It is the capitalism.
Exactly.
It's the kaleidoscope of capitalism. It's like you go to sleep with the tension built up of the last 30 things you swiped over. You wake up and reach immediately back for more anxiety. You swipe all day, and that anxiety escalates, and you get 0 moments where you are thinking about something that like grew up from inside you, and everything is coming in this way. And that's not fun, and not a great way to be a writer.
It's not a great. I have a hard time imagining creating under those circumstances. I run a business, but that still takes, especially a small business, takes a lot of creativity, right? You gotta pivot. I hate that word. I'm so tired of that word, pivot. I've been pivoting. And we're coming up on, say, the 5-year anniversary, literally the 5-year anniversary of the 5-year anniversary of my store, yes, but guess what else happened 5 years ago? COVID. Happening still. Opening up into COVID. It's a great time. But also, immediately I had spent years working at other bookstores. I had studied the industry extensively. I had taken classes, and then the ultimate, well, no one knows what's going to happen now gets dropped on top of opening the business, right? And the community rallied, and I rallied, and the booksellers who worked with me rallied, and we have not stopped pivoting ever since. And now that is normal. A low-level buzz of anxiety I think it's just like in all of our bones and all of our bodies. And a lot of us started with that to begin with. So having that add on, now we were talking about you get the safe job, you climb the ladder, etc. We have DC. Obviously, there's a lot of jobs here that have absolutely nothing to do with the federal government. However, that is a part of our workforce, as well as careers based around the fact that the federal government is here. And to have that quote unquote safe job, the ultimate safe job, you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna earn a ton, but I'm gonna have a good retirement, I'm gonna have health care, my family's gonna be okay. To have that be ripped apart is watching this city that had a level of safety and thought they were just gonna be safe no matter. We've been through all of the presidents, literally. And there's a certain level of safety that has been removed across classes, across the spectrum. But still, we are getting hit the most. And watching that get ripped away has a lot of people going, and I know because they come into the bookstore and they talk to us a lot. And they come into a bookstore, they feel like it's a safe place, and they go, what is beyond all this? What are the other options? And it's a terrifying moment, but it's an amazing moment.
It is, and to speak to some things that excite me, I did not. There were some mentors that I had when I worked at Google at the beginning of my career who would not let me believe that working at Google was a safe career. They were higher up in the company, and they had seen enough people get axed that they knew what it looked like to see somebody get caught flat-footed. And in the decade that I have spent outside of that company, I have watched people that I care about, who I'm close to, buy houses, default on their mortgages, default on their kids' tuition, because you live in a corporation. It is a part of the mission of the entity to make you feel like you are safe, so that you will offer your best work product until that day, that one bad day, like they say about like free-range chickens, when the axe comes and chops your head off.
One bad day. It's a great life till that one day.
But to your point, I'll say it like more brutally, the way that a rapper put it to me. He was like, well, the bright side of what's going on right now is that maybe all these black folks who think that it's a safe career to be out here sharecropping will change their attitude on that, and will start figuring out ways that they can. I mean, I'm going to say it brutally, honestly. The last time I was an employee was 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. I know how to make money outside of a corporation. There's a lot of people getting fired and quitting every day who are running for the hills looking to figure out how to make money outside of a corporation. I am here for them for a small fee. But I think that, that's like a cheeky story to pat myself on the back. But what I'm really saying here is this is a moment for people who are creative, entrepreneurial, scrappy, all the things I talk about in my first book, which are characteristics that many black folks have by necessity. This is a moment where those characteristics are going to be incredibly valuable.
Yes, and I think it is a moment, too, where if you see just how fragile the structure is, and again, I'm preaching to the crowd. We know. If you know how fragile the structure is that you exist in, that seems so insurmountable. You're like, well, I didn't want it to be destroyed this way because a lot of wonderful people and a lot of people, just people, deserve basic human dignity, and that's being taken away. However, if we're not going to dream of something better now, when are we going to do it?
Yeah, and as you know, as quick as I am to make a joke about like how this serves a certain type of person, everybody is not the type of person who wants to spend their days and weekends thinking about how they're going to make their next dollar. That's not exciting to everybody.
Yep. Speaking of rest.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, that's not a restful, that is genuinely interesting and fun to me because I think it's a problem to solve. But like, some people want to be gardening. Some people want to be playing pickleball, you know, like, and I do feel, I do have empathy for that. Yeah.
I think one of the lines that I underlined immediately was like, my pen is my only defense against anti-blackness, even amongst my friends.
Yeah.
And you talk about there are moments of harshness that happen in your writing, that happen in conversation, that then they come back around. Specifically, at this part in the story, he's talking about a woman who read your article in The Guardian that sort of kicks off some of the thoughts in this book, and like sheepishly admits to you that she was sending all those like, I love you, my black friend, texts in 2020.
It was in the New York Times.
New York Times,
no,
sorry, not The Guardian, no. the Guardian's, I don't know, they're all owned by one dude now. Okay. No, so yes, you're right, is the Times, obviously. But they, and then like, is still kind of like awkward around you, but also still looking for absolution, and you're not giving it to them at all. And like, that is the dance, right? It's like, you're supposed to, I admitted I was wrong again, and you're like, that was not the point.
Yeah, so something that's in the book is, like, okay, we got the bad stuff out. Like, this is the fun stuff, especially about, you know, there's a handful of people in here who are in here because they follow me on socials. They are following me more as a media entrepreneur than they are as an author. And I am speaking to them right now.
All right.
Which is that there is something, thank you, it's like, wherever you are, there's something really fun about watching your megaphone get a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. And it's slowly but surely, it's been 8 years, right? Mm-hmm. But what starts to happen is maybe it's not altogether changing the world that's out there, but it does piece by piece change the world that you live in, because you meet people who know what you think about something already. And so there's a shorthand that is created there.
Yes.
There are, I don't know, just as a standard 37-year-old black guy with dreads, there are some things that walking around certain people would assume about me, and certain things I won't catch them saying that they think are going to fly over my head that they might think twice about in different environments. But when you're us, you walk outside and that's gone again. Mm-hmm. and you know that. And so therein is also like a strange juxtaposition, you know, between going places where people know your voice and going places where they don't.
Yeah. And I think also you talk about, the activists who are like, I'm not an entrepreneur, though. I'm not making a brand out of this.
That's
and then you're
not
like,
me.
and then they were like, you were like, they were absolutely working on a Netflix deal while they were saying this to my face. And I think part of the refreshing thing about both the content you were making and your writing is that you're like, it is a level of transparency that is that also hard to live in when you are actually out there stating what you are doing, and your thesis statement is like across the top, and yet everyone's still putting other stuff on you.
Yeah, I think that's part of the media industrial complex that we're in right now. Is like, you find, like we said it earlier, but you find someone who is just good enough to pass as the thing that you need to sell, and you just slot them in because they're sitting right there. Mm-hmm. By the way, a lot of those activists who I'm referencing, who I would see around, you know, at Dumbo House and socialite stuff and at birthday parties and stuff like that, like, they did make a lot of money being trending activists. And I often wonder right now, because I just wonder how they make a living now, because those budgets are gone. Nobody, H&M doesn't have a activist wear line anymore on their website. Like, so I don't know how those people are
Activist
paying
wear
the bills.
powered by child labor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny because it's true.
Exactly.
Right.
No, and that brings me to, I'm just going to keep quoting your book at you. Is that cool? Does that make sense?
Please.
I thought it'd be worth it to live with my thoughts consumed by Black trauma if it meant I could create more purely, more potently from that headspace. I thought it would be profitable, but the thoughts are just too dark. And I think there is an idea that when we are talking about love, when we are talking about joy, when we were just talking about it every day, that it's not the real. You gotta, and that's extremely present in Black literature and Black art of all kinds. But it's also just true in art, right? Like the sad 120-page novella in translation is worth so much more than a romance novel or whatever. You know what I mean? And so you're like, what?
Yes. I joke with my girlfriend who's sitting over there that, like, I love to see despair. I do. I mean, if a show does not have enough despair in it, and I think I got that from my sister who's also sitting in the front row here, but, like, if it doesn't
Writes a great sad book. No, I'm just kidding.
If the stakes aren't high enough, like if there's not something that feels real and urgent and a little bit like there's despair in it, then it doesn't hold my attention the same way. With that said, you know, this selling out to me is self-abandoning for profit no matter what, including if that means pretending to be sad or angry or anxious or depressed when you're not. That's selling out too, and I have done that.
We're talking about when you sold that piece, and you were saying, like, I was skipping down because I had sold a piece and George Floyd had just died.
That's my favorite. I was gonna start the book with that, and my editor convinced me. I thought it was a good idea to make the book chronological, but there's a chapter in the book that starts with me. One of the most, to this moment, one of the greatest feelings of joy I've ever had was writing this New York Times piece about George Floyd. The piece going viral is my first time ever being viral. And it started to change. My first book was coming out in, like, down the path, like months down the path.
Yeah.
And because this piece went viral about a horrible atrocity, all of a sudden I had leverage at my publisher, and they, like, moved my pub date up. They tried to do, like, a blackout day, you know, in protest on a day when I needed something from my agent and my editor, and I was like, no, like, me. And they listened because I had leverage because of something terrible, and that confused me. It really did something weird to me.
It definitely did, and that is the part where I was like, oh, good, because literally what happened was Oprah shared a list of Black bookstores in America, and we got 50,000 orders in a week. There were 3 of us. My bookstore is 500 square feet. You clap, it nearly bankrupted my store.
Oh, no.
Because what also happened is everybody hit that guilt order button, right?
Yes.
And then the publishers ran out of all those books. And then there was no way to print or bind books in the States because it was COVID. And also, we've been getting rid of that for years, and most of our books are made. Our paper comes from Canada and Mexico, y'all. It's going to get real fun here real fast. It is.
Can I just put a point on that? Like, white tears are very expensive.
They are very expensive for us long term. There's an immediate thing where they say, like, oh, plug into this, get this. It's not gonna last. And if it comes back to bite you, it comes back hard.
Yeah. By the way, my nephew is sitting here. He turned 7 in 2 months. And I just, like, wonder.
He's like, what are you doing?
How will these things come back out from him however many years from now? Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
I'm really excited he's here. This was my most highlight of the whole thing. Is that he's here.
You do talk about your nephews in the book, and it's pretty dope.
Yeah.
As an auntie myself, I was like, yeah, that is right. I think, and that is the thing, too, is, like, the reward of doing the bookstore is the kids who come in and they're like, this is my bookstore. Like, I'm a guest in their bookstore. I don't own the bookstore. They do, and the neighborhood doggos own the bookstore. I'm just a servant. I'm here to give treats and graphic novels. But I think one of the things that kills it is, like, we had to redo all of our structure as a store. we were more known online than we were in our own neighborhood, and a lot of that was to do with COVID because people weren't leaving their house, right? But then when we got to be back in our community again and have our doors open, the whole thing was geared towards serving these people who were not actually connected to who we were as a store. They weren't connected to our Petworth, the neighborhood that I love, that I wanted to serve, right? They weren't connected to downtown Silver Spring, where I grew up and I wanted to be physically present in. And it was this thing where I was like, oh, if we decide to pull away from all of this online attention and these people who are not connected to us to serve what in my ideal was a bookstore that could serve my immediate community. It's not that I don't want to abandon those people, but they abandoned us overnight, right? Yeah. And we had grown to serve this thing, and we were getting angry emails because a book that was out of print everywhere, but they were screaming at me. And I have friends in bookstores all over the country. They weren't screaming at the white-owned bookstore.
Now you're incompetent.
Now I'm incompetent because this book is out of print, right? So you have all these things happen, and we have had to completely go back to my original business plan from 5 years ago and the last 2 years because the white tiers were expensive.
Man, can I give an anecdote to that same point? Like,
I have to laugh.
Well, I mean, and one of my best friends is here. He's a TV writer. Our whole community of like Hollywood writers and stuff, I'll speak for myself, right? Yeah. Got a big new place with a backyard. Yep. Got a big old Jeep. First I had a Wrangler, then I got a Cherokee. You know, I really did like a Negro thing here. I like bought all kinds of ridiculous stuff, you know, and then like my first book, I probably did $70,000 worth of DEI talks at big corporations. This was February of 2021.
And we sold books at those talks. Not for you, but like that was what we would do. We would go to those. And it's great. I'm glad they were spending those dollars.
That was probably like the first 3 weeks after the book came out. This year, zero. Because it's... And to your point, you build a machine to serve what feels like the demand, and you build a life around it, which I will not do again. But then, you know, the market changes in one way, the president changes, and all of a sudden it's like, dang, I got to pawn off all this stuff.
Yeah, it was very interesting. We
I didn't pawn anything. No.
Yeah,
I tried to
kidding.
pawn something, and I couldn't.
And it was one of those things where I was like, luckily we like, you know, again, we knew, and that's not why we existed, but we obviously also weren't going to turn down business. And so it was this thing where I was like, okay, we got to switch our focus back. We got to bring it back. But also we were getting messages from people, and we got to turn it to questions in a minute. Oh. We were getting messages from people last year saying, hey, anything that has like Black or woman or gay on it, we're not going to get those POs approved to buy books from your store.
No,
we can buy the same book from another store, but we're not going to get the PO approved to buy it from your store. You should know. Like people were trying to do us a solid. They were like, "It's coming. We're not.
It's over with.
We are 100% complying in advance. You are going to need to." And I was like, "Good to know."
I would just add, and I mean, I'm going to learn if this is true, but I don't think that means that the demand is altogether gone. It's just not interesting to those particular outlets and vendors, which and I'll make it very specific to me. You know, I wrote a children's book with Black main characters. Yeah. And sure, there might be a gazillion bookstores right now that don't want a DEI book, but there's still a gazillion Black parents who want that book. Mm-hmm. My job now is to find them myself.
Yes.
Or with you. And I can. Yes.
Well, that's the point. It's like as we always have and always do, we circle up around each other, right? And that is the beautiful thing. But then that can also, as you talk about, because it sounds so nice and simple, except then you have elitism or categories or things within our community. And so it's reminding that being obsessed with looking the best on this ladder, no, let's think, what if we don't have that ladder and we just have each other?
It's, you know, and this is where I say I'm not an economist. I'm not a political scientist. Like,
You're not? You're on a stage. I think you have to be all those things right now.
Right. This is where I say I am a writer. I like to imagine things. I am creative. Like, I like to I know there's a gazillion reasons why some people will tell me, well, status always has to exist. There has to be a hierarchy that tells people where to go in a village and how relationships are going to work and how marriage is going to work and how economics are going to work. But okay, but I'm a writer. I'm an artist. I'm allowed to imagine outside of whatever you are telling me is practical. I think that's how new things get built. I think that's how it works.
Yes. And so we're going to start questions. So raise your hand if you'd like the mic, and we will get some questions. But I'm going to end this with your outro, which is still my favorite lines. I lose too much sleep. I absorb too much pain. I carry too much anger. It costs too much, and it pays too little. That's a bad trade. One that I can't rationalize even anymore, even in my most avoidant delusional moments. Like Amanda, your therapist, said, I'm not emotionally equipped to think about slavery and its effects on us every single day. I'm done internalizing myself as the oppressed. I don't want to sell pain for money anymore. So this will be my last time writing about race, for now, unless I need the money again. As an amazing last line. Give it up for Chad.
Thank you. And I also just want to say, for the record, Amanda is not my therapist. She is a therapist who I went to college with. Amanda Juris.
Yes.
Who you also hear on the Direct Deposit
Yes.
Audible Originals if
Yes.
you listen to that.
Direct deposit.
Yeah.
There we go. So if you have questions, now is the time. If our rambling conversation was at all inspiring, we have one here and one here. There. Yes.
Oh, here first?
Yeah, we got two.
Okay.
you.
All right.
I might be the second youngest one here. I always ask the author, it's on. Who inspired you to write this book?
I mean, the book is dedicated to my nephews. They are 6, 4, and 4. This is the best answer that I have. I would say when I'm writing recently, I now recognize they're going to be able to read what I write soon. They're going to be able to hear what I say. More so, like, I don't think Fox will remember what I've said here tonight, but I do think, and I said this in the car, I do think he's going to remember what it felt like to see his uncle do the thing. And what I want him to understand is that there is the best, I mean, anybody's guess is honestly the best title for what I do for a living. I do write books, but that not for a living. Like, so.
Nobody's writing books for a living.
Right. So what I want him to understand is there are as many different ways to live as there are people. And it's so scary, but it is really important to be honest with people about what you're going through. It's a vulnerability that I think creates closeness. It inspires. I started this community for aspiring creatives, and I did a Q&A the other day, and we're like halfway through the Q&A with this guy who follows, and he comes to everything. He reads all the books. He quotes them. All the books, there's two, but he read both books, and halfway through it, he's like, it gets a knock on the door, and this guy comes. I'm doing a Q&A with him, trying to like coach him through his own process as a writer, and it's cost him $47 a month to come to this thing. And he gets a knock on the door, and it's somebody else who lives in this building that he's in, handing him some food. And then he shares with me that he lives in a sober house. He's a recovering addict. He's 29. He's starting a job at Chick-fil-A next week to pay his cost of living there. And he's like, because I read your book, I realized there's, even if it's just one person, somebody out there will love my story. That's like, it's really hand to hand like that at this, like where I'm doing it. I'm not Stephen King. Like, it's not like when I write the book, I know 2 million people are going to read it. It's really about, can I shift 1, 2, 3 people in every one of these rooms' point of view? And so to tie it back together, I knew Fox was going to be here. So I was like, I better have something good to say, or at least be a version of myself that will stay with him. So I guess probably people like him. People like him. There's 3 of those people.
over here. Yes, and I'm actually going to ask you guys not to be annoying to stand up. I just want everyone in the room to see who's asking the question. Thank you so much.
Hey, Chad. I think.
What's up, David?
Not yet.
I'm just now seeing this side of the room for the first time. I see all these people I know.
I don't think it's on yet. I guess I'll just ask it. So I noticed you mentioned like you really like being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And then it reminded me of the older Dame Dash Breakfast Club where you talked about being a boss.
Huh.
But you also talked about not everyone wants to do that. So have you seen people who maybe don't always want to think about the next dollar, be entrepreneurial? Have you seen them do some entrepreneurial stuff? And like, what advice would you have for people who are more like that?
Who don't want to be entrepreneurial?
Yeah, or like who don't want to think about it for fun all the time.
But still want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that's difficult. As much as I like to think that I do this particular lifestyle because it will, make me wealthy, or like because I'm like some squashbuckling go-getter, I honestly just think it's fun. I think it's an adventure. I think it's like, it's fun for me to not know what's around the corner every day. I love that. I enjoy that. It's really cool for me when my phone buzzes or I get on Instagram and somebody I didn't expect has hit me up to ask for something. That could be somebody that I've been looking up to for 20 years. That could be this guy living in the sober house. That's exciting to me. I think that's something. But it does require it to be in my mind all the time. Like, I am up at 1 o'clock in the morning responding to DMs, every single one, because every single one is something. Every single one could become something. That's exciting to me. My dad's an entrepreneur. His dad was an entrepreneur. My mom's dad was an entrepreneur. My sister's an entrepreneur. Like, there's something about it that's probably just like in my DNA. For somebody who doesn't want to obsess over it that same way, I would say two things. One is, my mom was an executive for 30 years at a big corporation. That, in a lot of ways, I think created opportunity for some of us to be entrepreneurial, for us to like, also to understand what happens at a corporation, to even imagine building something entrepreneurial one day, right? I started off my career at Google. If I hadn't worked at Google, I probably would be a completely different person in this whole path. So I guess my answer is, one, if you don't have like the stay up all night thing, systems can really help you. Reliable people who do have that thing can really help you if you can find some, or one that you can hire. I mean, just gonna be honest, automation can really help you these days. The robots, if you can figure out how to make them work for you, they can help you. And I don't necessarily condone it, but that's one way that people who don't want to stay up all night DMing back and forth with people can, keep their operation moving along, is by automation. But again, like, to go back to the message to my nephew, it's like, I think there are as many ways to make it work as there are people. It's really very personal, I think.
And I think we've got one more question over. Oh, wait, you
Hi,
got it.
I'm
You got
Aunt
it.
Pam.
Hi,
and
Aunt
I've
Pam.
Hiya,
known
Pam.
Chad- I've known Chad since the beginning, and I'm just so proud of you, and I love you dearly, and
Thank you.
I
you
love the
too.
book. Now, there was a part in the book that was like a play or a short story or
A
something.
screenplay, yeah.
What was your intention with adding that, and what do you plan to do anything with it outside of this book?
There's a TV pilot in the book called The Tournament, which is my version of like a black Squid Game, a tournament to choose the best black person. Well, I had a couple ambitions with it. One is, people ask all the time, I talk a lot about my career as a TV writer. I talk a lot about the stuff I do in Hollywood, and people want to like see it. They don't want to just hear about, oh, this show that you sold that didn't work out, or this one you wrote for that came. I think a lot of the people that follow me that are kind of like learning from me or even comparing notes with me, it's because they have their own ambitions to be TV writers, directors, screenwriters. I'm seeing that a lot in the stuff that I'm building for them right now, community-wise. And we need resources. Like, it's not enough for somebody to tell you how to write a TV pilot. It's not enough to hear about that special TV pilot that Spike Lee wrote and yada, yada, yada. Like, we need to see it. We need to, like, read it line by line. I learned how to write screenplays with this guy sitting in the front row. And, like, somebody had to walk us through. Parentheticals go like this. Dialogue is like this. 1 page per paper, 1 page per minute. Too much of that stuff is hard to learn unless you go to school for it, unless you go pay a gazillion dollars to learn it. I want to make that accessible to more people, and that's why I put it in there, honestly. And then as a Hail Mary, maybe somebody will produce it. I don't know. But to be honest, at this point where the industry is, like, that's not even really a focus for me right now. Thank you. It was... Yeah, I mean, actually, Simon & Schuster was really cool about that. I think people are going to have to find more. The fact of the matter is people do not read like they used to. I mean, I think 90% of the people that buy this book will buy it just to be art in their house. And, you know, I am now moving into direct-to-consumer book sales. And so I'm going to have to find more ways to engage people and get them to pick something up and buy it than to offer them the same 250 pages that they're going to find across. I know it's heartbreaking. It's very sad, but that's the fact of the matter. Can we do a couple more?
I think we got
Yeah.
time for at
Yeah,
least
we
one
do.
more.
And
Kicking us
actually, the
out.
mic
Yeah, yeah.
was dead, I think. Is this better?
Who's kicking us out, Louise?
No, no
The
one's kicking
publicly
us out.
funded library that closes at 9.
It's only okay. It's 8:05.
Yeah.
It's 8:10. All right.
Mic check, mic check.
Sorry.
You
Hi,
good?
Chad,
Hi.
and everybody. My name's Kim, and I
Kim.
wanted to say that what I am hearing and seeing in you is a coming-of-age story, so to speak. And you're employing a mechanism that a lot of us may know in the room. It's called the talking cure. We just actually elucidate and talk your way through to a tier and a place. And the difference between you and a lot of young sons that go viral for other reasons is that you employ intellect, and the mechanism you use is the book. It's a mechanism of expression that some may not have or may not know to employ. And I just thank you for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Got, I think, a couple more. Got one over here too. Just FYI.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Chad. So, quick question. How do you navigate creativity and being perceived?
We went to high school together. That's Ashley. Ashley was the gymnastics star at our high school and a state champion cheerleader. I'm sorry.
Speaking of being perceived,
That's true. Like a nationally ranked gymnast. My bad. Okay. How do I negotiate what and being perceived? Oh. So, okay. I think about this a lot because now I'm trying to get other people to turn the camera on themselves, and it's a whole thing that I didn't know was. I did know it was so emotionally complex, but watching other people do it is different than me having learned it myself. I'll just be very specific. This is my relationship with attention. I grew up highly observed. I was observed by my parents. I was observed by a very intellectual older sibling, okay? A very perceptive one, also a two-time author, a now about to be a two-time author. I was observed. I was on a kids' TV show. I played basketball. I played piano. I did piano recitals. I did every sport and camp and SGA. And you went to high school with me. And being watched became a reality for me. It became being observed. Then I went to college. I found more ways to be watched. One time, me and Liam, he already knows what I'm about to say. we were about to go in a party or something like that, and I forgot even what the question was, but I was like, we're just gonna walk in here and make it about us. And that is a mentality that I cultivated, like, and I'm not saying it's all cute. That's just true. That is a mentality that I cultivated. Then I got into Hollywood, and I saw people who had that thing amplified, like times a million, right? And I think what I have tried to find is a tasteful version of it where I am still myself, turning the camera on myself, but we are in an attention economy. Like, I recognize how important it is. I will always be a sharecropper for publishing companies and broadcasting companies and studios if I can't amplify my work myself and monetize it. That's just so. So I guess at some point something snapped, and I was like, I'm not gonna be shy about this anymore. I'm being fake shy. This is stupid. I love people watching me and paying attention to what I do. Why am I, who am I kidding? And I think, who's laughing that hard? Yeah,
Definitely
right.
not your best
David's
friends.
known me since I
Not
was
your
like
friends.
6 years old. And so the part that I think is transferable to others is there are many people who want nothing to do with being perceived that way. And don't do it if you don't want to. But if you're being coy about it, that's annoying. Like, for what? Like, do it. Like, do the thing. You will be paid back in dividends if you do the thing. And I would also like to caveat, people who really know me, like, I share a lot, but I don't share everything. Like, I share what is meaningful to the message. I share, I think, what is generous to the audience so that they can take something with it. I try not to share gratuitously. Is that the right word? Is that the right word?
That is.
Yeah. Because that doesn't serve anybody, and it could potentially harm people. So that's my answer. Yeah. And it's fun. I love it. That's the other thing. I love making something and sharing it and seeing how it bounces back off of other people. I really enjoy that.
And as my job as the heavy, which I also enjoy, we are going to do one more cue, and then we're going to pivot to signing and definitely chat in the audience. You can chat, come up and chat in the signing, but we need to make sure we get all your books signed too.
Okay. I don't know why I've yelled this entire time.
I don't
Because you're very
they gave
passionate,
us
it's okay.
mics. What did they think we were going to do?
Hi, I'm Shay.
Hi, Shay.
So the way you go about writing your books is the way I go about designing my clothes, which is crazy. I've never thought that I would find somebody that
Nice.
thinks the same way that I do when it comes to art. But with that, when did you learn not to care about the response that some people might give you? Because you're very open, you're very honest. This is my first time actually seeing you in person, but my first take of you as an author was the George Floyd piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you were so open and raw about the feelings and the message and how it was just so like, I don't give up. And I want to know, when did that become a thing of it needs to be shared? I need to not care, or all that jazz.
And this might feel this might run counter to everything that I have said or portrayed this entire last hour and however long. But it's just, can we do one more? Yeah. Thank you. I'll be quick. There is something that is like foundational here that is not about me. It's just like, I'm in the middle between something that is meaningful for somebody and the person, and I need to like give it to them. That's everybody's job. It's not about me. If it makes a couple people in my life, a little uncomfortable, if it reveals something about me to an old friend who feels annoyed that, how dare he like say, it's not what if it helps 100,000 people? What if it helps 5? What if it helps 1? It's not about me. You get lucky when you get inspired. Like, you get lucky when you take a shower and have a good idea. get out of the way, pass it on. That's come to me from artists and just people, smart, interesting people that I like and have followed my whole life. I am this age, and so rappers have been a big influence on me. The great ones, there's a volume to it that you have to achieve in order to have a great career, which means you can't hold on to a great idea for that long. Pass it on. These are principles that I really, truly, strongly believe in, is that like volume, clarity, a certain level of detachment is really important to do this job. The scariest stuff that people said is so scary about this job, none of it has actually come true for me. And I wish somebody had told me at the beginning there was no boogeyman. I wish that. So I want other people to see that from me.
I lied. We're totally doing one more question.
One more.
Yeah.
He stood up.
A professional.
Did being honest through this book lead to you being more honest online, and have you been rewarded for it? And then would you say that no matter what your profession is, that looking toward the future, you have to develop a presence in front of the camera in order to get an advantage? Because if no one's reading, that means they're just watching.
Okay, I heard two parts to that question. One was reading this book, did that help me open up? Writing this book, did it help me open up on socials and like on the channels that I have? Probably. I think I knew going into this book. I think I took to my first book, Black Magic, with like I really wanted to like get an A on the paper. I really wanted like the elders to pat me on the back and be like, good job, Chatty, you did it. And they did. And for this book, I was like, if this is the end of me with this subject matter, I gotta put it out there and let it be done. I will tell you what has led to, for those who don't follow me in this way, on socials, I do like just monologues. I mean, that's what they are, basically. I'll take something that is interesting to me, something I see in the news, something I see in media. I will do a 1-minute monologue of it. That probably sounds boring, but it's way cooler than it sounds like. Like, it is a story in a minute. And sometimes it goes really good. And it has opened up a lot of doors for me lately because people understand how I can tell a story. They understand my point of view. I get to show what I can do on camera, etc. Leon's question was, did writing the book help me to be more open to doing that? What helped me be more open to doing that was self-producing a podcast for a year with my own money. And we would take an hour-long podcast. We would boil it down to the 1-minute clip from it to be a promo for the podcast, and the clips would go crazy, and nobody would listen to the podcast. So I was like, so why am I wasting $3,000 a month producing this podcast? I should just be doing these 1-minute clips by myself. And David, to go to back to your question about entrepreneurialism, that to me is entrepreneurialism. It's like, without my ego in the way, what here is of value to people? Well, I'm going to build on top of that. That's the thing that really has opened me up to that. And I love doing that. I really, really enjoy it. Yeah.
And then no matter what your profession is, do you have to develop a presence in front of you?
The question is, no matter what your profession is, do you need to develop an in front of the camera presence for socials? For the future of things. I don't have enough. I'm not the person to say what somebody has to do to have a future. What I would say is it gains you tremendous leverage to have your own communication directly with your customer, audience, consumer, no matter what business you're in. If I were the head of marketing or a marketing director at a company, I think I just licked the mic. I'm sorry. Sorry, yo. That's honest. You guys said I was honest. I'm sorry. It was gross. Ugh. That was so trifling. what I would say is like this. Okay, let me put it like this. Imagine you're like a director of marketing at Uber, and the great leverage that you have right now is that you are the director of marketing at Uber. Like, the moment you don't have that job title anymore, what is your leverage? Because if you're a certain age that you and I are getting pretty close to, the job market starts looking at you as old hat in your profession. So if you don't have a direct, if you don't have a direct connection to the people who are your consumer, your audience, your market, whatever, you don't have any more leverage. In what we do as artists, you're a fool, in my opinion, if you did not take some sort of ownership of your relationship to your audience. You are, and I shouldn't say you're a fool, but you are probably going to regret that you didn't even try down the path. That's what I would say. The next time I write a book, I know there's 60,000 people out there who I can tell that the book exists. Whether Simon & Schuster doesn't give me a single dollar of marketing budget, or whoever I do the book with, like that's commerce. That's it.
Talking direct is so powerful. And also what I will say is readership is actually up, but book sales are not. So the younger, actually the millennial, Z, and alpha readership is highest it has been in a very long time, which is beautiful and good. But it's not translating into direct dollars because the market, as you're saying, it has changed. And so that is a really interesting, complicated thing that we'll have a whole other talk, book business with Chad and Hannah, and we'll figure it out. I don't know, we can probably figure it out, right? In a half an hour, maybe we'll figure it out. We'll solve the book problem. We're gonna keep growing. But thank you all so much for joining this conversation. How to sell out.